Hello and welcome to Inside UNC Charlotte. I'm Meg Whalen. I'm the Director of Communications for the College of Arts and Architecture. A team of students and faculty from the UNC Charlotte School of Architecture recently won a competition sponsored by the American Institute of Architects. And here to talk to us a little bit about the project is a professor in the School of Architecture, Mark Manak. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how are you, Meg?
Fine, thanks. Thanks for sitting with me and talking a little bit about this project. It's been a really exciting endeavor. So you created a pop-up, small projects pop-up installation that has been at the National Conference for the AIA in Orlando. Tell me a little bit about that project, what it was, and who created it.
Well, it was initially it was a response to a competition solicitation that the AIA, American Institute of Architects, put out, looking for a pop-up as basically a temporary installation or construction for their national conference in Orlando. And so in response to that, we put a team together of faculty, students, and staff to think about how we might approach the project. And initially, when we thought about the competition, and the theme of the competition was reflection. So with this idea of reflection and it being in Orlando, immediately we thought about the Pulse nightclub shooting and how we might begin to think about memorializing that event through architecture in a temporary construction. So as we started to think about that, a couple ideas came to mind. One was, how do we use the architecture to create some sort of memory, or, to really, simply memorialize the event? But also, how do we begin to recognize those that are alive and sort of celebrate the lives, not only of those lost, but of those that might engage this piece? So we really wanted to develop a project that wasn't necessarily a designed object per se, but was more of an event or an experience, which led us to the way that we approached the project.
So the name of the project is Effervesce, and why did you choose that name?
Well, effervesce means to give off bubbles. And so the memorial itself is a mechanism that produces bubbles. And each of those bubbles are generated from 49 vials of fluid representing the victims of the event. And so people, when they encounter the wall, they see the vials, they see these mechanisms, and through interaction, they actually produce and can blow a bubble in memory of each of the victims.
Tell me how Effervesce was constructed. What's it made out of? What are the materials, and what was the process of getting it together?
So we wanted the architecture to feel very light, very ephemeral, very ethereal. Almost it's becoming or disappearing in a way. So it's made of laser cut acrylic and laser cut aluminum, which work together and kind of fade out as one approaches the wall toward the middle. And so by the time you get to where the vials are located and the bubble mechanisms are located, you can actually see the person standing on the other side of the wall. So it goes from thick to thin and from sort of material to immaterial.
And tell me a little bit about the team that did the design and the fabrication.
So we had a team, myself, faculty colleague Rachel Dickey, Alex Cabral, and Mackenzie Canaday, who work in the fabrication lab at the School of Architecture, and then two students, Jonathan Warner and Claire Shue. Jonathan's a third-year student and Claire is a second-year student. So we worked interactively through brainstorming and then developing the design. Initially we developed the competition submittal, which is a competition board, and once our project was selected, then we all worked together to actually figure the thing out.
What was it like, particularly for the students, to win an award like that, to be chosen?
I think for both of them, it was the first time they won something this significant, and for it to be in a national venue, and also to be something that they would get to then realize. The students don't always get the opportunity to realize the things that they designed, so it was a great opportunity, I think, for them on multiple fronts.
Yeah, and I guess the award from AIA actually was to have money to be able to put this together, as well as the opportunity to
That's
display
right.
it.
So they gave us some opportunity. They gave us an honorarium, which was some funding for material cost and also some travel expenses. So the students were able to work on and develop and prototype the design here in Charlotte using our facilities, and then we actually took the piece down to Orlando and then built it at the convention.
And what was the response in Orlando to it on the AIA conference floor?
There's a lot of architects there, thousands of architects there, and I think people came by it multiple times. Probably the first time they passed, there was curiosity, and then as people started to engage it, and the students were there during much of the convention, blowing bubbles and things like that, and once people saw the bubbles, it was sort of magnetic, and people came in wanting to learn more. And it really created the effect we wanted, which was to raise awareness about the Pulse nightclub shooting in the context of a convention, which is really about new materials and sort of architects learning, getting continuing education and things like that. I mean, I think this was an opportunity for there to be a moment of reflection and depth in the context of the convention.
Tell me what the future of this piece is. I know it's back on campus for a little while, and then what happens?
So yeah, after the convention, we brought it back here. I think so everybody could see the finished product, which is nice, and also for us to do some fine tuning on the construction. And then sometime this summer, we're going to return it to Orlando and to the center in Orlando, which is an organization that's helping the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting. So it'll live on. So even though it was conceived as a pop-up or temporary thing, it's going to live on for quite some time, really where it should be in Orlando.
Great. And just tell me a little bit about sort of your thoughts about the role of architecture, whether it's small scale like this or large scale, in helping people process events like that shooting. I mean, I think it's a really interesting thing to think of structures as playing a role in the processing, the grieving, the healing.
Architecture is something which is pretty permanent in most cases, and increasingly we have shorter attention spans and memory lapses and things like that with the influx of just information we're bombarded with on a daily basis. So the power of architecture and memory is just to get people to pause for a second and to think deeply about a particular event, and even something as small as this piece we think contributes to that in a very profound way.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for telling us about it, and thank you for watching Inside UNC Charlotte.